Back in 2004, I was a teenager that really enjoyed watching Naruto, but then that long stretch of filler came. In case you never watched Naruto, after the first part of the series, Studio Pierrot decided it was a good idea to make almost 100 episodes worth of filler so as to not get too close to the original material. That means that there was almost a 2-year gap where no manga material was adapted into anime. So I started reading the Naruto manga because I couldn't wait for the anime to adapt the newest manga chapters. At the time, the big shonen series were One Piece and Naruto, and a manga that was quickly gaining a following, Bleach. Those are the series that would later become known as the Big Three. Wanting to read something new, I started reading the new popular manga, and I read the entirety of Bleach in a single day, which at the time was almost the entire Soul Society arc. Yeah, I know, I read fast, but in my defense, Bleach is a pretty fast reading. Lots of pretty pictures of guys fighting with big swords, and maybe saying 1 or 2 cool phrases per page. Since I was starving for a cool manga to read, people started recommending me more and more mangas, which I devoured. Series like Full Metal Alchemist, Hakusho, Ichigo 100%, Hikaru no Go, I would read all kinds of genre as long as it was good, and that's where I discovered my love for shonen manga. But among the recommended titles, there was one that stood out from the rest of the others, Hunter x Hunter. It was a very typical story, or at least that's what it looked like at the beginning. But I won't talk too much about Hunter x Hunter's story. I could do that, I could praise it for all the reasons you may be thinking about. Hunter x Hunter deserves all the praise it gets, and there are plenty of videos or articles online that do just that already. So this video isn't gonna be about that, but rather, the point of this video is to ponder a question: is Yoshihiro Togashi being a selfish creator? Let me continue with my story of how I fell in love with this series. I didn't have internet at home at the time, so I downloaded all the chapters that were available. At the time, it was around chapter 220 or so, The Birth of the Chimera Ant King. I downloaded them and burned them into a CD so I could read them home. Needless to say, I was hooked from the beginning. Togashi shows he's a master storyteller since chapter 1. I think I read all those 220 chapters in a single weekend. Again, I was a teenager with a lot of spare time, I didn't really go out to party that much, and Hunter x Hunter was one of the most addictive binge readings I have ever experienced, so yeah, I read it fast. Some weeks later, having finished the chapters I had downloaded, I visited my dad's house again, wanting to read some new chapters. And back then there was no online manga browsers or anything like that, you had to go directly to the Scanlator site, which I still remember was a group named Next Year. If anyone from Next Year is listening to this, thank you so much. Really. To my surprise, there were no new chapters of Hunter x Hunter. I was confused. There was a couple of new Naruto chapters. Bleach and One Piece did also have chapters I hadn't read. So how come Hunter x Hunter had no new material for me to read? To my understanding, it was released in Weekly Shonen Jump, so it was serialized weekly, right? Wrong. Reading through the Next Year forum, I learned about Yoshihiro Togashi, the creator of Hunter x Hunter, and how he had been having some hiatuses over the years. If you are watching this video, I doubt you don't know this, but basically every manga released in this manga magazine, Weekly Shonen Jump, is released in a weekly basis. Except for Hunter x Hunter, which for some reason got some special treatment. The reasons have never been explicitly said, probably because Japan respects the private life of mangakas very much. Even a picture of Togashi, it's hard to come by. Not much is known about Togashi's private life, or most other mangakas, they tend to be pretty secretive. Anyways, back then in 2004, we didn't really know that Togashi had a back problem, as it's known today. Even 5 years ago, Togashi's back problem was considered a rumor, but recent interviews as well as comments in Weekly Shonen Jump and even a book released by one of his former assistants has stated that Togashi has had back problems even since the serialization of Yu Yu Hakusho in the early 90s. That's information we didn't have in 2004. Back then, it was a common joke to say that Togashi just spent all his time playing Dragon Quest instead of drawing manga. It was even speculated that the character Dune was Togashi because Dune's room looks very much like Togashi's room in this photo that was circulating online at the time. Those were some jokes and rumors that were thrown back in 2004, and as I said, back then we didn't really know of Togashi's problems. Of course, when Togashi started to release unfinished drafts for manga chapters, we pretty much assumed that his hiatuses must have been because of health reasons. Let me repeat this again, these were rumors, but they were never confirmed. There was never a clear statement regarding Togashi's health or anything like that, not by Togashi or Shueisha or anything. So half of the online community thought he probably was sick or something, and the other half of the community just assumed he was being lazy. Hiatus ex hiatus and phrases like, "Well, hope a Dragon Quest doesn't come next year or we won't have any chapters," were all part of the lingo of the Hunter x Hunter community since way back. Anyways, I got used to the hiatuses, we all did. I will just look for chapters every month or so, or see if there was any updates about new chapters being released. Eventually the Chimera Ant arc ended. I think it ended in 2010, and then in 2011 Hunter x Hunter's new anime adaptation started, and Togashi did the unthinkable. He released 30 straight chapters of Hunter x Hunter. That's the longest streak of chapters released without interruptions he has ever had in Hunter x Hunter serialization. I personally have this theory that Shueisha told him he had to at least wrap up the election arc and make it a good point for the anime adaptation to end. And let's be honest here, Hunter x Hunter could have pretty much ended in chapter 339, which is where the 2011 anime adaptation ended. But no, Togashi decided to introduce us to the Dark Continent and beyond Netero and all sorts of crazy stuff. It's almost like chapter 339, it's a semi-decent ending, at least for Gun's plot, but then Togashi is like, nope, gonna continue this manga. Here is 5 new plotlines. Oh, also, remember Netero? Well, he has a song and the song is a bad guy. Also, there is a Dark Continent. I understand, this is Togashi's story to tell, and he wanted to continue telling his story, but this is undeniably a selfish thing to do. Both to himself, as he will put his body through more stress, and for his fans, as starting a new arc will mean years of slow pacing without a guarantee of Togashi being able to finish it. Now, I don't want you to misunderstand what I am saying here. I am not saying that finishing Hunter x Hunter is more important than Togashi's well-being, quite the contrary. I am saying that Togashi, in his selfishness as a creator, put his own life in risk by prolonging Hunter x Hunter, and I personally think he should have stopped back in chapter 339. All for his well-being. That's what I'm trying to say here. It's obvious releasing 30 straight chapters of Hunter x Hunter took its toll in Togashi. After releasing chapter 340, a chapter that left lots of fans with tons of questions, Togashi didn't release a new chapter of Hunter x Hunter for more than 2 years. Okay, being fair, he did release a 2-chapter special for the Hunter x Hunter movie, but that didn't move the story on. He left us fans waiting for over 2 years. Now, I might be sounding like a spoiled brat to some of you. This is after all Togashi's manga. He can do whatever he wants with it. It's a similar situation to that of George R.R. Martin and his Song of Ice and Fire series of books that inspired the popular HBO show Game of Thrones. Both George and Togashi are in a very similar spot. They have been making a beloved franchise for over 20 years, but for some reason or other, they don't get along with deadlines. Martin even got asked by fans whether he thought he would finish his series of novels before his death, to which he responded with a fuck off. And in his defense, I think it's pretty rude of some fans to be more concerned about a series of books than a person's well-being. But it's not like this will be the first case of an author dying before finishing their series of books. The Dune series, the Wheel of Time series, and the Millennium series, to name some popular book series, will all continue after their authors' deaths. And some mangas that were left unfinished were Phoenix by Osamu Tezuka, Itasura na Kiss by Kaoru Tada, and Crayon Shin-chan by Yoshito Usui, are all examples of mangas whose mangaka died too soon. In the case of Itasura na Kiss, the anime made an ending based on the author's notes, and Crayon Shin-chan's anime was mostly original material and continues to this day. But I think Hunter x Hunter is in a different situation. It has come to the point where even Togashi himself is worried about this. In a recent interview, Togashi said that he wasn't sure he would live to see Hunter x Hunter ending. And when I read this interview is when I asked myself for the first time, was Togashi being too selfish? Let's think this through. Togashi had been having back pains ever since the serialization of Yu Yu Hakusho. He also made another manga before doing Hunter x Hunter. This manga was Level E. It was serialized in Weekly Shonen Jump but released in a monthly basis. In 1998, Togashi starts Hunter x Hunter. The first year he was pretty consistent, missing only 3 issues, but the hiatuses started to become more and more frequent as the years continued. So much that at one point we had no new chapters for the main story for 2 whole years. And for the last 10 years, Togashi has been drawing in average 9 chapters a year, which for a manga that's supposed to be released weekly, makes the pacing way slower than it should be. And finally, even when Togashi hasn't released as many chapters as other authors in Jump, Togashi has probably put his body through the most stress. One of his former assistants, a mangaka named Ahino, wrote a manga called Sensei Hakusho. There is a part where Ahino tells us about how one day he came to the studio and saw Togashi lying on the door, drawing there because of his back pains. Let that sink into your head. Togashi preferred to overcome physical pain than to miss a deadline back in the Yu Yu Hakusho era. Sure, some of the later Yu Yu Hakusho chapters were missing details and backgrounds, but still, this man endured physical pain even back in the 90s. And it was probably a huge reason as to why Togashi decided to conclude Yu Yu Hakusho at the peak of its popularity with only 19 volumes. I am about to wrap up this video, but before I do, let me tell you other 2 very important quotes from Sensei Hakusho. 2 quotes that will give us great insight into the mind of this crazy genius. Togashi on leaving the inking to his assistants. If I did that, I think that will be the end of my life as a manga creator. Another quote where Togashi talks about his editors and Shueisha. Listen to what the editorial department says at first, and then once you start to sell, do whatever the hell you want. Togashi is a man that will literally draw laying on the floor, enduring physical pain as to not miss a deadline, and would probably rather die than to let another person ink his drawings. So yes, to answer the title of this video, Togashi is pretty damn selfish, but it's his right to be selfish. I totally understand that he wants to start and end his own story in his own terms. If he wants to ink every single one of his drawings, even at the cost of his health, so be it. It's his own decision to make and no one else's. I find it pretty interesting how Togashi's attitude is similar to that of Gon, willing to hurt himself to extreme levels to accomplish his goals, being stubborn a lot of times. Remember how Gon pretty much lost an arm or hurt his hand in almost every Hunter x Hunter arc? Going all the way to the Chimera Ant arc, willing to sacrifice everything to fulfill his wish. Maybe Togashi was self-reflecting in Gon, or maybe it's just me who thinks that? That being said, I think we can all agree that Togashi was being selfish ever since the days of Yu Yu Hakusho. But don't get me wrong, if I were in Togashi's position, I would probably have done the same too. Maybe for Togashi, being a mangaka is both drawing and creating your manga's story, and he feels that if he had someone else do the drawings, then it wouldn't really be his story. Even since the days of Yu Yu Hakusho, he probably should have just accepted that his condition was not the best, and even if it hurt his honor as a mangaka, he should have asked Shueisha for an artist. But that didn't happen, and now it's been more than 20 years since the start of Hunter x Hunter, and fans are eager to see this manga conclude. I don't know how serious Togashi's condition is, but if even Togashi is unsure if he can finish the series before his death, then maybe he's in a worse condition than we think. Togashi could seriously consider other routes. Imagine a Dragon Ball Super-esque route where Togashi just gave the anime staff some guidelines so they could continue the Dark Continent arc. Of course that won't happen, Togashi wants to finish this manga, his manga, by himself. But again, he is being selfish by not allowing someone else to do the drawings. Maybe he's not sure of who could do it, or maybe he thinks the pay will be too high? I don't know how loyalties will be paid, but I don't think it will be fair for Togashi to receive only 50% of the royalties, since he pretty much made Hunter x Hunter the hit it is right now by himself. There is so many people that will help him. First of all, we have his wife, Naoko Takeuchi, who is the creator of Sailor Moon. The only problem is, I don't think Naoko could draw shonen style. Then there is his first assistant, Ahino, the guy who made Sensei Hakusho. They left in good terms, and Togashi will benefit a good friend of his from the pay of drawing Hunter x Hunter. Then we have Togashi's brother. In case you didn't know, Togashi has a brother, Togashi Hideaki, who is also a manga artist and helped him back when Hunter x Hunter started. Then there is his son or daughter. I obviously don't know if they like drawing manga, but if they do, what better way of doing so than helping their dad finish his magnus opus. And then last but not least, Sui Ishida, the creator of Tokyo Ghoul, who made a Hisoka one-shot story. All of these people are people that will probably help Togashi if he asks them to, and will also benefit. But all of this won't happen because Togashi just wants to draw by himself, even if it's bad for his own health. One last weird thought I had, something that will never happen. Imagine if every chapter of Hunter x Hunter was drawn by a different mangaka in every issue, or maybe in every volume. Wouldn't that be cool? There is a precedent for something like this. The Manga Kingdom got a chapter redrawn by different mangaka and it was pretty crazy. Shueisha could even release a Hunter x Hunter volume drawn by different authors, and one drawn later by Yoshihiro Togashi, and people will buy them both. At least I know I would. This was just a crazy idea I had and it will never happen. But yeah, let me know what you think. Do you also think Togashi is a selfish, reckless, lovable genius that should take better care of himself? Leave your comments down below. I would love to read them.